If you think you're going to find out the truth behind who assassinated Charlie Kirk from mainstream media, you have another thing coming. I'm going to start a new book series today that may go only for members only if it's not popular enough with the public. But I want to introduce to you the introduction to a book that is foundational to what is happening in the Charlie Kirk situation and in our country. Now, why I haven't read this book that I'm going to show with you on screen right here is One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1 by Whitney Webb. And there's a Volume 2 as well. Obviously, by the title Volume 1, you should expect there's going to be another volume. This is a highly rated book, like 5 stars by anybody who takes the time to read it. I could tell by reading chapter 1 or the introduction. I could tell by reading the introduction that it was going to be a fabulous book, well written and covering a lot of the things that I have already dug into in my research way back when I was big into the Jeffrey Epstein story. I loved the Jeffrey Epstein story. It was uncovering a lot of secrets in America, and I started to dive into that for my own personal benefit, but never was a YouTuber at the time. Now I'm doing YouTube, and I can't wait to kind of get into this again, because as soon as I saw the Charlie Kirk assassination and the things that he was saying about Jeffrey Epstein and how he just resealed again and decided not to share things about Jeffrey Epstein, I went, oh my God, Jeffrey Epstein is never going to die. Okay, well, he is dead, but well, actually there's some conspiracy theories to say that he isn't dead, but the point being is that the Jeffrey Epstein story is long from gone, and people are going to probably be assassinated if they poke into the Jeffrey Epstein story any further. Now comes this book review that I want to do for you called One Nation Under Blackmail, and it's a lot to do with Jeffrey Epstein and our government and our ties with power, what's going on, how media is controlled, all the things that are behind the Jeffrey Epstein story, I think are covered in this book. Now, again, I haven't read the book, but I have been recommended the book by somebody that I very much respect. And then when I watched the reviews and I saw that it was like 5-star reviews and everybody's saying that, oh my God, this is blockbuster. I believe this is blockbuster. And I think by reading the introduction alone, when I read it, I thought, America needs to be talking about this shit, and we need to wake our asses up real quick. And so I give to you today the introduction to One Nation Under Blackmail from Whitney Webb. Now, while most of everything that I'm going to show, I'm going to read to you almost every single word of the introduction. That's how good, how well written it is written. And I believe that it still falls under fair use. Now, let me tell you a couple of things about that first. One, I highly recommend you get a copy of this book. And again, I haven't read it in its entirety. I'm going by recommendations and the reviews on the book. And I think it's going to cover a lot of stuff that's going to blow your mind. The introduction will just be whetting your appetite. So I recommend you buy the book and read along with me. My style is, and I've done this before with books in Idaho 4, When the Night Comes Falling by Howard Bloom. I also read an entire book, An American Sickness, by Elizabeth Rosenthal, I think it was, in the Luigi Mangione case. Both of those books informed the story being told in the media and gave us food for thought. We learned a lot. We learned a lot from digging into the narratives being told in those books and then talking about it in detail, like I'm going to do for One Nation Under Blackmail. So I'm going to read to you now the introduction to this book. And again, this one is going to be open to the public to see how it goes. If it dies and only 20 people read it because they don't like the format, then I will start doing this as members only. I had read the entire book of multiple books, again, the 2 I just mentioned before, all the way front to back. And again, not every word, because I just focus on the parts that I found interesting. But we did those entire books. And those who participated in the book series said they loved it. They read along with it. And they loved the fact that there was commentary. Again, fair use. As long as I give you new commentary and new thoughts and don't just read it like I'm an audiobook, it should fall under fair use, meaning that I can take even large sections of this, as long as I pause from time to time and talk to you about what you just read and break down some analysis. So it's not just straight repurposing their audio or their book. Sorry. So let's get right into it. I'm going to put it up on screen. We're going to go to the introduction. I'm gonna make this the font a lot bigger. Wow, I'm gonna make the font a lot bigger so that we can read along at a different pace. I need to go to the introduction to start it. All right, is that big enough? Let's make it a little smaller. There you go. let's start here in this book, Introduction to Volume 1. And again, I'm gonna highlight almost every single word. That's how important this book is going to be. The July 2019 arrest of Jeffrey Epstein and his subsequent death that August brought national as well as international attention to a sex ring where certain members of the power elite sexually abused and exploited female minors and young women. By the way, again, I need to stop quite often to commentate on this because just reading it word for word will not let us be fair use. So I want to say one thing. One of the things the media does is they spin things and they tell you things that aren't true. Constantly in the media, they referred to Jeffrey Epstein as a pedophile. And while this is a very small nuance, I want to tell you again, I want to use it to accentuate how a little change of things can make all the difference. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't a pedophile. The people that were that he was exploiting in the sex trade, these young women, were not minors so young that they qualify as pedophilia. Nor does it meet the definition of pedophilia. But what's important to the media is for you to constantly hear the word pedophile because that will make you then hate the man because we all hate pedophiles. So, and I'm getting myself in trouble probably with YouTube's algorithm by saying that word so many freaking times. But again, I don't believe in pussyfooting things and telling you like words that mean something close to it so we can avoid an algorithm. It is what it is. It's going to suppress it a little bit. So be it. The point being is that constantly referring to him as a pedophile when the minors that he was using do not rise to the level of that. They're too old. These are young teens. And while that's still reprehensible and why we still don't believe that it's appropriate in this country, and I also don't believe it's appropriate, it is not that P word. Because that is a much younger thing. And also a person who is a P word. I said I wasn't going to pussyfoot, and all of a sudden I'm pussyfooting. I think it's because I did that word 20 times in a row, and I probably just killed an algorithm. So I'm going to slow myself down a hair. However, we will talk like adults on this channel. So we'll go back to using that word very, very shortly. The point being is that the reason why the word is misused, is because it makes people angry, and that's all the media does. Is they focus on having you get angry about things and look away from the real issue. So again, while it is important to note that the young women that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, his madam, were running through his house, and the blackmail they were getting on high-level people in America, when that what this whole book is about blackmailing people in America, taking over our country, intelligence agencies in bed, literally and figuratively, with Jeffrey Epstein. That's the important part. But what they want you to focus on is a dirty old man who's a pedophile, and that's your focus because it'll get you to not look at the big picture. All right, continuing on. Epstein's death, officially ruled a suicide, not a suicide, by the way, has been treated skeptically by many for a variety of reasons. Regardless of the real circumstances of his death, it has led to scores of Americans embracing the view that his death was both intentional and necessary to protect his powerful co-conspirators and the full extent of his covert and illegal activities. Again, that is what most people who are a little bit awake, even just a little bit awake in America, realize. That man had dirt on powerful people, and he must die. He must be shut up. And the fact that America was sold the lie that, oh, Jeffrey Epstein had a change of heart. He just realized he was a horrible, horrible pedo and decided to hang himself in his jail when everybody looked the other way and the cameras malfunctioned. If you bought that bullshit, you have no critical thinking skills whatsoever. Anyone who has half of a sense of like, hey, let's think this through, has already decided there was something more dark and sinister to Jeffrey Epstein's murder, not a suicide. And people in Hollywood were talking about it. Everybody that is a little bit awake should know Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Let's go on. Even if one chooses not to entertain such disconcerting possibilities, it is quite apparent that most of those who aided or enabled Epstein will never see the inside of a prison cell. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein was the tip of an iceberg, as this book will tell you, and most people will never see a jail cell. Only Jeffrey Epstein, because the media was able to label him as the single man in charge of a little pedophile ring, and then killed himself out of an act of embarrassment and shame. And most people in America bought that shit because people don't want to think too hard. They don't want to think too clearly, and they don't want to think with Charlie Kirk's assassination recently, that too deeply. They want the simple answer about one guy who had some emotional issues and just decided to do a horrible thing, and let's put him away and let's forget the big picture. Let's not talk about what really is happening behind the scenes. Even when big people inside the CIA are telling you this is happening, most Americans will not listen. They refuse to listen, and I'm going to beat this drum until I guess they shoot me too. That's what's horrible, is that may be coming. That may be coming for any people who just decide to say enough. Let's take our country back. Good luck with that. Now, let's take our country back. Please let me make this caveat for all of our sponsors out there, that we are not advocating revolution in this country. I'm not advocating violence or anything to that matter. When I talk about taking it back, I'm talking about taking back our minds. Let us take back our minds and think critically and stop listening to the spoon-fed narrative of mainstream media. All right. So let's continue on. Though Ghislaine Maxwell is now serving a 20-year sentence, others known to have been intimately involved in his illegal activities continue to enjoy protections from the so-called sweetheart deal, in quotes, or plea deal that followed Epstein's first run-in with law for his sex trafficking activities in mid-2000s. Keep in mind, Jeffrey Epstein had already been busted once for the sex trafficking issue and was given a quote-unquote sweetheart deal. Why? Because they admitted he was in bed with the U.S. intelligence agencies. And that shit got swept under the rug very, very quickly. And then when he got busted again, it became he's a pedo who decided to hang himself out of guilt. I don't know how people keep missing this shit, but I'm going to try to one more time bring it to your attention because it relates to everything that's happening with Charlie Kirk, because I think that it's connected. It may not be, but I think it is. And I think if you pay attention, you'll start connecting the dots. All right. In addition, Ghislaine Maxwell's recent trial saw information involving third parties redacted. Ghislaine Maxwell's recent trial saw information involving third parties redacted, leading many to believe that the public will never know the names of the Johns or clients who benefited from the sex trafficking activities of Epstein and Maxwell and who are potentially blackmailed by them. That's the thing. Everyone has had a problem. We want to know who was being blackmailed by Epstein. Again, in case you don't understand the concept, let me explain what Jeffrey Epstein was doing in my understanding and my best guess of what's happening and what a lot of people think. Jeffrey Epstein ran young girls, underage girls for a reason, which is that he was very rich and he was very connected to high-level men who also had to have an interest in young females, underage females. And because of their connections at the powerful level where they sit down with very powerful heads, they could say as two men, hey, you like young girls? I got a young girl for you. And then he would bring them to his private island or to his mansion. He would hook them up with young girls, and then unbeknown to them would videotape or whatever, get evidence of their tryst with these young females, underage females, which is illegal and can ruin their careers and topple governments. Once he had the blackmail information on them, then he would start to leverage that and control governments. Well, you want to have your secret not come out? I got tape on you. I can ruin you. I can ruin your whole country. So do what I want you to do. That's the idea that's going on behind Jeffrey Epstein. It was called a honeypot situation, luring in powerful, wealthy men, the likes, big names, presidents, members of the heads of major corporations have been known to go to Jeffrey Epstein's island where he had young girls. That's going to be brought up in this book, I'm sure, many times. I'm certain of it. And again, that's why he was killed, and that's why his list of clients, Johns, who went to the island and had sex with these underage girls. And again, you can't prove it. He kept a list of who was coming and going. All people want to see right now is who are the names who came and went from his private mansion. They don't want to tell you. Guess who was pushing for people to tell you the names? Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was saying, tell us the names. We need to see the names. I'm putting pressure on you. America needs to know who was visiting Jeffrey's mansions and Epstein's, and his Epstein's. Who was visiting his private island? Who was visiting his mansions? Tell us the names. And I'm going to keep pushing for that. And crack, he was shot and killed. And people will still go, oh, there was just this random college student who happened to fit the MO of every other assassin of a major political figure. We'll put that aside for right now. Again, The fact that Charlie Kirk was pushing for the names to be released is not, in my opinion, a small matter. I think it is a reason why he was killed. Now, let me caveat that a little bit. One of the individuals that I'm talking to a lot lately, who we're going to do a show together called Deep Devils, I believe, which is diving deep into the deep state and things like that. Stuff that's probably going to get us in a lot of trouble. He and I both agree that these kind of assassinations don't happen for just one reason. They often hit multiple reasons. So when a person has a dozen or half a dozen different reasons why they should be dead, that's why they end up dead. Charlie Kirk had a whole bunch of reasons why he needed to be dead, and Jeffrey Epstein and his push on the Epstein files is just one of them. So later, as we get into his story, as you start to find reasons to believe that there was, oh, well, actually, I think it was this. You're probably right. It's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, because when people are assassinated like this, it's not just one thing, but one thing can end you up dead. And Jeffrey Epstein could be the sole reason why Charlie Kirk was dead, but it's probably just a contributing factor, one of several that you'll get to know as the story goes on. Yet for both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, there is much more to the story. This became apparent when it emerged that Alex Acosta, then serving as the Secretary of Labor in the Trump administration, had disclosed to the Trump transition team that he had previously signed off on Epstein's sweetheart deal because Epstein had belonged to intelligence. Listen, this is not a Republican versus Democrat type of shit. I don't get into politics as favoring one party or the other. They're all full of shit. I want you to pay attention. Alex Acosta, then serving Secretary of Labor in the Trump administration, made a statement. Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal because he belonged to U.S. intelligence. If that does not start to wake you up, something's freaking seriously wrong with you. Listen, hopefully you already know this. Everyone needs to start getting on the same page with this. We need to win our minds back. We're being controlled by media that wants to tell, oh, he was just a pedophile. No, he was a U.S. intelligence asset, and that makes a difference. Acosta, then serving as U.S. Attorney for Southern Florida, had also been told by unspecified figures at the time that he needed to give Epstein a lenient sentence because of his links to intelligence. When Acosta was later asked if Epstein was indeed an intelligence asset in 2019, Acosta chose to neither confirm nor deny the claim. So Acosta had been warned. He's a U.S. intelligence asset. Go easy on him. When confronted by someone in the media, and we will find out who, because American media doesn't give a shit. They are controlled. Another country's media pressed on the issue, and he basically is like, I'm not going to confirm or deny that shit, that he's a U.S. intelligence asset. Other hints of a connection between Epstein and intelligence subsequently emerged, with reporting from a variety of sources that Epstein was affiliated with the CIA, Israeli intelligence, or both. So again, some researchers started to dig. U.S. media will not dig, but some researchers started to dig. Epstein was involved in not only U.S. intelligence, but in Israeli intelligence, being Jewish in heritage. So Epstein in Israeli intelligence, along with Ghislaine Maxwell and her father, who was in Israeli intelligence. Despite the implications and significance of these connections to intelligence, most of mainstream media declined to dig deeper into the claims, largely focusing instead on the salacious aspects of Epstein's case. He's a pedophile running young girls. That's what we're going to run on headline news, not that he's connected with U.S. and Israeli intelligence. And again, if you are even getting remotely started on the Charlie Kirk assassination, you are probably already hearing the comments that people are saying, I think he was assassinated because of Israel, because of the United States, because again, Charlie Kirk was pushing into areas in Israeli and U.S. intelligence. Now, the narrative soon became that Epstein was an anomaly, the sole mastermind of an industrial sex trafficking enterprise, and a talented con artist. That's your big thing. You're being told, oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was a smooth talker. He lied to a lot of people. He was just, that's all it was. He was just a smooth talker that was into young girls. That's it. End of story. Even his closest associates and benefactors like retail billionaire Leslie Wexner, huge name, by the way, huge name. And what company does he run? He runs some really interesting thing, young girls in lingerie God, what is that company? God, I'm losing it. But interesting enough, Leslie Wexner has access to young girls, which helped the Epstein thing. But they just passed it off as, hey, Wexner knows nothing about it. I'm sure that will come up in the book as well. Anyways, so his benefactors like retail billionaire Leslie Wexner have been taken at their word that they knew nothing of Epstein's crimes. I know nothing about it. I got young girls. He's running young girls, but I don't have any connection with that shit. Look the other way, even when there is considerable evidence to the contrary. Indeed, it was later stated by Cindy McCain, wife of former Senator John McCain, that we all knew what Epstein, was doing at an event in January 2020, where she also claimed that authorities were afraid to properly apprehend him. John McCain's wife says everyone in Congress knows Jeffrey Epstein is a U.S. intelligence agency and knew what he was doing. He was running young girls and involved in U.S. intelligence, and everyone knew that honeypot situation existed. And that was publicly stated. And people still, media still don't want to touch that shit with a 10-foot pole. They want to tell you it's just a random person. Hey, this guy's he just likes little kids, which isn't even accurate. It wasn't that level of age, but that's okay. It plays well on the media. All right. So, if he was such an anomaly and had it was a standalone con artist, how was he single-handedly able to intimidate law enforcement apparatus of an entire nation for decades? Because again, they knew Jeffrey Epstein was doing these things, and yet nobody would do anything to him. Even the first time he got busted with running into young girls, they looked the other way and gave him a sweetheart deal and put him right back out on the streets again, because he's got control over intelligence, law enforcement. He has power in powerful places, and they took it easy on him. The claim that Epstein did not have powerful backers and benefactors stands an incredibly shaky ground. Oddly enough, mainstream reporting on Epstein was once relatively open about his alleged intelligence ties. So there was a time when the media would admit Epstein probably has some kind of intelligence ties with Israel or the United States. They backed off of that in recent years, and they went with the narrative he's just a con artist pedophile who liked young girls. So with British media reporting as early as 1992 and throughout the early 2000s that Epstein had ties to both U.S. and Israeli intelligence. In addition, also in the early 1990s, Epstein's name was mysteriously dropped from the major investigation into one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, even though he was labeled the mastermind of the swindle in grand jury testimony. Let's go back and hear that again. In the early 1990s, Epstein's name was mysteriously dropped from a major investigation into one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history. Ponzi schemes is when a Ponzi scheme, if you don't know, is basically when you tell an investor, hey, I can get you an X number return on your investment if you invest in my company. And then when you take their money as an investment, you give some of that to falsely make to pay off dividends to somebody else, saying, see, I could give you those kind of rewards, give me money, and you keep funneling that down the lawn. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a shell game. You're lying to people about the money you're making for them, and as long as you just keep the machine going, someone down at the bottom is going to get very, very screwed. And I know that's confusing if you're not familiar with Ponzi schemes, but if you're interested in that kind of stuff, by the way, I have a family member who was busted in one of I think the largest Ponzi scheme in Oregon State, and I had somebody so I got to know a little bit about Ponzi schemes. But anyways, let's continue on. Around the same time, subsequently released White House visitor logs, around the same time, subsequently released White House visitor logs showed that Epstein visited Clinton's White House 17 times, accompanied on most of the visits by a different attractive young woman. Reporting on those visitor logs was largely done by a single media outlet, Britain's Daily Mail, which hardly any American mainstream media outlet bothered to investigate these revelations about Epstein and a former U.S. president. So again, Epstein's bringing young girls, a different girl almost every single time, and only a British paper had the balls to say anything about it because mainstream media didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So was Epstein bringing young girls into the White House for President Clinton? Probably true. What was that extra? Probably true. Anyways, I don't know what the hell that was. Why was Epstein so heavily protected from justice for decades in connection to both his sex trafficking crimes and his financial crimes? Why have the once commonly reported intelligence connections of Jeffrey Epstein now been relegated to conspiracy theory, despite evidence to the contrary? And again, at one point, media was looking into Jeffrey Epstein and his ties to U.S. and Israeli intelligence, and then they dropped it. And now you are called in America conspiracy theorist if you bring it up. If I talk about Charlie Kirk being assassinated because of his ties to U.S. and Israeli intelligence, or pushing that string on Epstein and the U.S. and Israeli intelligence, I will be labeled a conspiracy theorist. This is the new narrative control. They will tell you, if you bring these things up and try to educate America on what's happening, you're a conspiracy theorist. And that narrative is working very well. Thank you very much. If he was such an anomaly and a standalone guy, okay, we already got that. Oh, I think I just accidentally rolled to the next page. Yes, I did. All right. If powerful senators knew what Epstein was doing to young women and girls, who else knew, and why wasn't something done? Let me reiterate that statement. If senators knew Epstein was running young girls and didn't do anything, why are we not upset about that? Well, one, because media won't report that senators knew he was doing it, even though they did. And if you do report it, somehow America still won't say, gee, maybe they should be prosecuted. Nope. One guy will take the fall for this, and it's just easy to sell. This 2-volume book endeavors to show why Jeffrey Epstein was able to engage in a series of mind-boggling crimes for decades without incident. Far from being an anomaly, Epstein was one of several men who, over the past century, have engaged in sexual blackmail activities designed to obtain damaging information, i.e. intelligence, on powerful individuals with the goal of controlling their activities and securing their compliance. Again, if you get high, powerful men, either in major corporations of the United States or in the White House or in government or heads of religious organizations. Yes, that's another one, that there are pastors, for example, high-level mega church pastors who are on the list of Epstein files, allegedly. If you have that kind of dirt on them and have them with young girls and say, hey, I can ruin you, I can bring down your government, I can bring down your churches, I can bring down your corporations, then you have blackmail material. If you haven't understood this, you're missing something. You should have it by now. All right. Most of these individuals, including Epstein himself, have their roots in the covert world where organized crime and intelligence have intermingled and often cooperated for the better part of the last 90 years. U.S. intelligence and underground criminal organizations are in bed together, is what that's basically saying. Perhaps most shockingly, these men are all interconnected at various degrees. Following the formal establishment of organized crime intelligence in World War II, this is when some of these agencies started, like CIA, FBI, those kind of things, through what is today remembered as Operation Underworld, the relationship between these two entities has since become so intertwined and so symbiotic that today it is nearly impossible to know where one ends and the other begins. So there's no difference between the criminal underworld and our intelligence agencies, is kind of what it's hinting at. As this book will show, many of the biggest scandals and events of the latest century have not only been tied to these networks, but many of them also have counted on the involvement of sex trafficking and blackmailers, Epstein among them. So many of our biggest scandals in this country are going to be tied to these networks, including intelligence agencies and underworld activities. Publicly, these men these men who we're talking about at the back of these scandals, these men have been powerful lawyers, businessmen, and lobbyists. Their more clandestine and shadowy activities, though a matter of record, are often only known to those who are well-read on certain historical events or in the field of deep politics. And again, I've got a show that I'm going to try to launch here soon called Deep Devils, where an individual and I are going to delve into those deep state ties and all that stuff like that. It's not for everyone, which is why we're not going to do it every single day. We're not going to do it every single week. We're probably going to do it every other week because, again, America's appetite for deep subjects is sometimes a little bit on the low side, unfortunately, because there's football and baseball to watch, which, don't get me wrong, I love football and baseball. I've got my Mariners, go Mariners, and Seahawks, go Seahawks. But so I'm a sports fan as well, but I make time to dive into deeper issues. All right. In order to understand Jeffrey Epstein and his activities in their full context, one must understand his powerful context and the structures that protected him. Those structures and these networks did not begin with Jeffrey Epstein, and they also did not die with him. It's not over because Jeffrey Epstein died. That shit's still going on.
In revealing his broader milieu and that of his past associates and clients, one is left not only with a damning indictment of Jeffrey Epstein, but is also a damning indictment of American institutions, particularly those involving national security matters and law enforcement. It is a major, major problem for me when you have people continually telling you, look, law enforcement and our intelligence agencies have been corrupted by underworld activities, and the bad guys and the good guys are mixed together. You cannot distinguish the two. It is all one big, huge criminal underground network at some level. That's what they're hinting at. We cannot properly address the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, nor prevent them from being committed by others in the future, unless we grapple with the covert power structures that have long wielded blackmail, bribes, and assassinations as their weapon of choice to corrupt and control public institutions while manipulating and looting the public. Again, this, thank God, this book and my conversation about this book are still, thank God, protected by freedom of speech in America. It is soon closing. That window is closing. They are trying to shut down free speech. They are trying to label people like us basically as conspiracy theorists. And if that don't work, we'll be called terrorists. That'll be the next step. They're ratcheting down on anybody that speaks out against the machine. And we will lose if we don't start waking up and fighting back and insisting to do better in our media, to do better in transparency, to name names and stop hiding names and get these people out of these things. And maybe it's too late. Maybe we can't do anything. So we'll keep talking until they shut us all down. Anyways, Jeffrey Epstein was not an anomaly, and his activities represent just the tip of a veritable iceberg. Whitney Webb from 2022. Very, very recent. This is not some old book, although that might make it more powerful. This has been going on and still nobody's done anything about it. All right, a few more pages left, and we're going to get through this within an hour, which is my typical length of my shows. So let's go ahead and finish this chapter of introduction out. Who are these people? They are the group that popularly called the Enterprise. They are in and outside the CIA. They are mostly right-wing Republicans, but you will find a mix of Democrats, mercenaries, ex officio mafia, and opportunists within this group. I want to stop there and point out that I want to make that clear, while it is mostly right-wing Republicans in this criminal organization that they're talking about in this book. I'm not going to call it that. I'm just going to use the book as our thing. While they're mostly right-wing Republicans, this is not a political issue. Get this out of your head. This is not Republicans versus Democrats. I'm not a liberal attacking the conservative party because I'm reading a book that says they're mostly Republicans. It's also Democrats. That's what they said right there. Don't let them spin your head and make you into a right versus left bullshit. This is all of them. This is all of them. They are CEOs. They are bankers. They are presidents. They own airlines. They own national television networks. They own 6 of the 7 video documentary companies of Washington, D.C., and they do not give a damn about the law or the Constitution or Congress or the oversight committees, except as something to be subverted and manipulated and lied to. When they own your media, when they own your corporations, when they own video documentary companies that are going to report to you on what's going on in America, you will not get told the truth. If you let them, they will take over not only the CIA, but the entire government and the world, cutting off dissent, free speech, and free media, and they will cut a deal with anyone from the mafia to Saddam Hussein if it means more power and money. This is what I'm talking about. We are not even slowly, we are rapidly losing control in this country. Free speech is being attacked. We are being told. First, they're trying to shut us down by just name calling. Conspiracy theorist, nutbag, they're trying to shame you out of existence. If that doesn't work, then they get control of all social media platforms, YouTube, TikTok, all these different places, and have them control the narrative. Don't push anybody who's saying anything against our our organizations. Don't say anything. So shut them down and don't give them a platform. Don't give them reach. Remember, it's not a violation of freedom of speech. It's just a restriction of freedom of reach. That will tell you. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom of reach. We don't have to promote you. You can say whatever you want in your closet. Therefore, you do have freedom of speech. You just can't say it on a wide platform because nobody is guaranteed in America freedom of reach. You're just given freedom of speech. That's going to be their argument for why they're still allowing you to say whatever you want, but you can just say it in your closet. You don't have to say it in a book or on a major platform because nobody said you had to have reach. That's their argument, and they've been winning that argument for quite some time. All right. Let's continue. They stole $600 billion from SNLs and diverted our attention to the Iraqis. They are ripping off America at a rate never before seen in history. They flooded our country with drugs from Central America during the 1980s, and Contra affair, cut deals with Haro in Mexico, Noriega in Panama, and the Medellin and Cali cartels, and Castro, and recently the Red Mafia and KGB. Now, again, you start talking about all those things, most people start to check out. They don't want to learn history. They don't want to get into history. They just want to check out. Shame on you. You need to wake up, or just enjoy never being able to say anything that they don't like, or you'll go to jail. That's what the alternative is if you don't start to wake up. They ruin their detractors, and they fear the truth. If they can, they will blackmail you, sex, drugs, deals, whatever it takes. And that was written from former CIA officer and Iran-Contra whistleblower Bruce Hemming in circa 1990. So there you go. That is the introduction to One Nation Under Blackmail. I hope that you found that interesting. Based on how this video does, we'll continue the series publicly. If, however, it gets hammered and only 20 people want to watch that video instead of hundreds or thousands as some of the other videos are getting, then it'll become member-only content for the few of you who want to wake up to this stuff. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you consider giving a like, a thumbs up, a share. I hope that you will spread the word. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, informing, in my opinion, what you're going to hear come out in the Charlie Kirk assassination. That's why I'm putting it on a thumbnail with Charlie Kirk. This is going to inform what's happening in many ways in the Charlie Kirk assassination. And so I hope that you're paying attention. Don't fall for the narrative of hating each other and labeling it as conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, anything that divides you into two fronts. That is the way to keep you separated, because a house divided against itself cannot stand. Pay attention, wake up, let's do better. Thanks.